My parents gave me up for adoption at age 8 because I was a boy. When I inherited a fortune. If you had told me when I was 8 years old that one day my parents would reappear in my life only to ask me for something absurd, I would have believed it, because even as a child, I always knew I was nothing more than a burden to them. My name is Ian, I'm 27 years old, and what I'm about to tell you is not a sweet story of overcoming adversity, it's about abandonment and a kind of hatred that comes from where you least expect it, your own family. My biological father's name is Rick. My mother, Janet. They handed me over to another family when I was just 8 years old. Not because they couldn't support me, but because I had ruined their plans. I still remember the last night in the house where I was born. It was raining. I had hidden under the kitchen table with my broken teddy bear. My mother was screaming at my father from the other side of the living room while my older sister, who must have been about 10, ate popcorn and watched cartoons. I was trembling, not from the cold, but because I had heard my name. I knew they were talking about me. You promised you would take care of this, Rick. I can't take it anymore, she yelled. I already spoke to the people at the Baptist camp. They know a couple who wants to adopt, he replied, as if he were talking about giving away a dog. The next morning, a blonde woman with the face of a Sunday school teacher appeared, alongside a man in a plaid shirt with a shy smile. Their names were Carol and Mike. They took me away in the back seat of a blue van. I didn't even have time to understand what was happening. I could only hug my teddy bear as my mother closed the door without looking back. And the craziest part? They didn't even pack my things. I left with the clothes on my back and an old toy. Literally, that was it. I remember looking out the window and thinking, maybe I'll come back tomorrow, but I never did. That first night, I slept on an inflatable mattress that made noise every time I moved. Carol gave me a pair of pajamas that looked like they had been bought for another child. They were big, with dinosaur patterns. Mike gave me a glass of warm milk and said I would be safe there. I nodded, but said nothing. My throat ached from holding back tears. The house was small, it smelled of old wood and powdered detergent, very different from my old house, which always smelled of cigarettes and fried food. I looked out the window of my new room, trying to see something familiar outside, a sign, a pole, anything to remind me that I could still go back, but everything was different. I was a stranger there. No one yelled, no one broke plates, no one told me to shut up because my voice was annoying. Just silence. I didn't know how to deal with that. When I was little, I thought everyone grew up afraid of their mother. I thought it was normal to hold my pee because she would get angry if I woke up in the night. I didn't even have a set place at the table. Sometimes I ate standing at the sink while my mother cleaned and huffed, as if I were in the way. When I tried to show her a drawing I made in school, my mother said it was a waste of time. She threw it in the trash in front of me. I got used to being ignored. My father spent days away traveling for work, and when he returned, it was as if I were invisible. Once, he brought a gift for each of my sister's expensive dolls with shiny dresses. When I asked if there was anything for me, he said, "You're not interested in those things." I didn't know if he was serious or if he had simply forgotten. But the worst part wasn't the lack of gifts, it was the lack of affection. Once, I heard my parents arguing. She was yelling, "You promised me. You said if it was a girl, we'd keep her." And he would reply, "But it's too late now, Janet. No one wants a 7-year-old boy." They were talking about me. That sentence echoed in my head for weeks. Things started to get worse when I turned 8. It was as if they suddenly decided they no longer needed to pretend I was part of the family. My father, when he was home, only spoke to me to give me orders: wash the car, sweep the yard, clean my sister's bathroom. One Saturday, I woke up early and found my sister Hannah lying on the sofa with ice cream. My mother came in, saw I hadn't washed the dishes, and screamed at the top of her lungs. I started to become more aggressive. I didn't hit anyone, but I would kick walls, punch my pillow. It was my only way of not exploding inside. At school, the teacher sent a note saying I seemed too sad. My mother signed it and threw it in the trash. And then came the day of the clothes. I came home after one of the worst days at school. I had been teased for carrying my sister's pink backpack, which they had forced me to use. That day, I saw a pile of bags on my sister's bed, new clothes, dresses, pants, even shoes with lights. Not a single pair of socks for me. Nothing. I stood in the doorway and asked if there was anything for me. She replied, "You already have something to wear." I went to my room, took a deep breath, and did something I never imagined doing. I grabbed a pair of scissors from the kitchen and cut everything. Every dress, every new garment, even the shoes. My blood was boiling, my hands were shaking. It wasn't hatred, it was pure desperation. Her reaction was immediate. I still had a piece of fabric in my hand when my mother burst into the room like a fury. She didn't even ask what had happened. She came in with her eyes full of rage, her sandal already raised. She hit me, not carefully or with control. It was blind, violent, full of hate. "You are a mistake, a damn mistake," she screamed, pushing me against the wall. My sisters ran in and started yelling not to defend me, but for the clothes. "He ruined everything, Mom, everything." I just stood there, waiting for someone, anyone, to see me as a child. But no. I was a burden, a mistake too expensive to keep carrying. Later that night, my father came home from work. My mother spoke to him in private. They whispered in the kitchen for a few minutes. Then he came to me with a cold voice. "Ian, tomorrow you're going to live with other people." He said it like someone saying, "We're going to the market." No emotion, without looking me in the eyes. I stood still, my dirty teddy bear clutched against my chest. My mother crossed her arms and added, "They're coming for you in the morning. Don't be late." I sat on the floor for hours. No one came to see me. No one asked if I was scared. When I finally got up, my legs were trembling. I walked to my room and didn't want to lie on the bed. It felt like it wasn't mine anymore. When dawn broke, I heard hurried footsteps in the kitchen. It was an ordinary morning for them, as if nothing was about to happen. When I left my room, my mother didn't even look at me, just said, "They're coming. Get ready." I was wearing the same shirt from yesterday, dirty and wrinkled. They didn't even let me change. At the door, I heard a brief honk, and then silence. The door opened, and a couple I had never seen before walked in. The woman smiled with her eyes squinted, like someone trying to seem kind but not knowing quite what to say to a broken stranger. The man kept his gaze low, somewhat ashamed. My mother gestured with her head, like someone handing over a late package. "There he is." There was no hug, no goodbye, no bag, no explanation. Just me, with my teddy bear in my hand, looking at these people who had just inherited a burden that wasn't even theirs. "Hello, Ian. I'm Carol. This is Mike. We're going to take good care of you," she said, crouching down a bit, as if talking to a scared cat. I didn't answer, I couldn't even look her in the eye. I just nodded and walked toward the door with short steps, as if there were still a tiny chance someone would say, "Wait, come back." It was a mistake. But there was no mistake, no turning back. Across the street, their car was waiting for me with the back door open. I got in without a word. Behind me, the door to my old house closed slowly. On the way, no one spoke much. Mike drove slowly, glancing at the rearview mirror from time to time, as if expecting me to break down at any moment. Carol tried to make conversation. She asked if I liked ice cream, if I wanted to stop and eat something, if I had favorite toys. I just stared out the window. My stomach ached. It wasn't hunger, it was fear. When we arrived, I noticed their house was much smaller than my old one. The paint on the walls was peeling, the yard was just packed dirt with a rusty wheelbarrow forgotten in a corner. But there was something there that threw me off, a small wooden sign on the door with the word, "Welcome," written by hand, all crooked. Carol opened the door and said, "This is your home now, Ian." The word, home, hit me like a punch. I had never heard it directed at me before. I entered cautiously, not knowing if I could take off my shoes, if I could touch anything. I was so used to being told to shut up and stay out of the way that any movement I made felt instinctively wrong. Carol pointed to a small hallway and said my room was the last one on the right. I walked there without a word. When I pushed the door open, I saw a bed with colorful sheets, a lamp shaped like a rocket, and a bookshelf with some children's books. In a corner of the wall, someone had drawn a sun with crayons. We prepared this space with a lot of love. We hope you like it, Carol said behind me in a low voice. That first night, I truly slept. It wasn't the light, interrupted sleep I had at my biological parents' house, waking up to screams, slamming doors, or the TV blaring until the early morning. There, everything was strange but silent. When I woke up, Mike was already in the kitchen. He was making pancakes, humming some old song I didn't know. He looked at me, smiled, and asked, "Do you like them with honey or with jam?" It took me a few seconds to answer. I was waiting for the catch, the scolding, the typical, "Serve yourself." "With honey," I mumbled, almost voicelessly. He put 2 pancakes on a plate, carefully poured honey over them, and passed it to me as if it were the most normal thing in the world. And maybe it was, but to me, it felt like science fiction. Carol came in shortly after, already dressed for work, and said that later we could visit the new school and that, in the meantime, if I wanted, I could help organize some old books in the basement. She said, "If you want." As if I had a choice. He passed me the plate as if I had done something to deserve it. 2 perfectly golden pancakes, honey dripping down the sides, and a glass of milk on the side. I couldn't remember the last time someone had prepared food for me without complaining. Mike sat across from me and ate in silence. Carol came in right after, still putting on her coat, and approached with a tired but kind smile. Carol and Mike didn't have children. They had tried for years. Formal adoption, even an insemination abroad that consumed almost all their savings. Nothing worked. They gave me what no one had ever even tried to give me, security. Not luxuries, security. Mike sold tools door to door. He wore button-up shirts with the brand's name embroidered on the chest and carried an old order book. He went from workshop to workshop asking, "Do you need a wrench?" One day, he got tired of knocking on other people's doors. "Let's open our own," he said, with the certainty of someone with no other choice. Carol quit her job at the supermarket and went with him. They started in a garage. I was about 9 years old at the time. I helped however I could, counting screws, cleaning shelves. The garage became a shop, the shop became a warehouse. The warehouse became a distribution center. When I was 12, we moved to a house in the suburbs that looked like it was from a catalog. A curved staircase, dark wood floors, a room just for me with a sign on the door that said, "Ian's Base." Carol enrolled me in a school where the uniform didn't come torn. I had a new backpack, sneakers that didn't hurt my heel. Lunch with a little note for good luck on the test hidden in the napkin. At 15, I started working with Mike for Real. First in the warehouse, then accompanying deliveries, and finally helping Carol with the reports. "If this is all yours one day, you have to know how to do everything," he would say, with a tone that was half serious, half excited. I grew up. I studied during the day, worked in the afternoons, had dinner with them at night. We laughed about everything. We had a tradition of watching old movies every Friday. Mike's favorite was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He always cried at the end. At 21, I graduated with a degree in business administration. Mike cried like a baby on graduation day. Carol ended up with a headache from smiling so much. "Seeing you with that diploma," she said, "is better than any miracle I ever prayed for." 2 years later, they went away for the weekend. On the way back, an out-of-control truck swerved into their lane. It was a blind curve. It was instantaneous. There was no time. No ambulance could have gotten there fast enough. I was the one who had to identify the bodies. The world went silent for weeks. I don't clearly remember the days that followed. It's as if my mind covered everything with a thick fog where time didn't pass. I only remember the silence, the empty house, the lights left on in the hallway because I couldn't sleep in the dark. I cried all the tears I hadn't cried when I was abandoned. I cried with rage, with guilt, with nostalgia, with a knot in my chest that seemed like it would never loosen. Their room was left just as they had left it. The toothbrush, the book on the nightstand, Carol's coat hanging behind the door. Everything became both a relic and a ghost at the same time, and every corner of the house reminded me that they had existed, that they had loved me, and that now they were no longer here to see the man I had become. They left me everything: the house, investments, stocks, the entire company. But I didn't want any of it, I just wanted them back. But what they built was what kept their names alive. So, I kept going. I grew the company. I opened branches, hired over 100 employees, put their names on the social foundation I created. I did everything the way Mike would have done it, with precision, with purpose. Update 1: last night, the reception at headquarters called me. "Mr. Ian, there's a man here. He says it's urgent." "Name?" I asked. "He says his name is Rick. He says he's your father." When the guard mentioned that name, Rick, my hands went cold. I was in the executive boardroom with contracts spread across the glass table, ready to sign the acquisition of another company. But suddenly, all those papers seemed useless, like blank sheets. I went down to the lobby. There he was, the man who had given me away like someone leaving old furniture on the curb. Now with slumped shoulders, an unkempt beard, cheap clothes that didn't hide his poverty. But what struck me the most was the way he looked at me, as if he had the right, as if the years hadn't passed. "Ian, my son," he said, almost in a whisper. My son. He had never called me that, not even when I was. Behind him, I saw 2 exhausted women, and with them, 4 small, restless children running around. My sisters, my nieces and nephews. A living portrait of chaos and abandonment. And it was right there, in front of that broken man and that scene, that I understood, the past wasn't dead. It had just knocked on my door. The guard looked at me, waiting for a signal. I could have simply had him removed, pretended I had never heard that name. Rick managed a crooked smile, showing missing teeth, and extended his hand. I didn't take it. The smell of cigarettes and sweat reached me before he did. "Your mother," he began, scratching the back of his neck. "She left. Ran off with another man. Left me all alone." The words fell heavily, but they didn't stir any pity in me. "And them," he said, pointing to the women behind him, "my sisters, they came back home, each with 2 kids. No husband, no nothing. We're all together. But, Ian, I have no way to support us." He said it with a sharp naturalness, as if it were logical that I, the same boy he had thrown out without a second glance, should now be his lifeline. The children were running through the reception area, tearing magazines, banging on the furniture. One of them looked at me from a distance with wide-open eyes and asked quietly, "Are you Uncle Ian?" That question pierced my chest like a blade. Uncle Ian. I had never been an uncle to anyone. I hadn't been to any birthdays, any school parties. I didn't know these children's names, and suddenly they were all looking at me as if I were the answer to a problem I didn't cause. Rick took advantage of the silence to take another step. "You have so much now, you can tell. Imported car, building with your name on the front, everyone talking about you." His voice trembled, but there was a glint in his eyes that wasn't sadness, it was expectation. "We just need a little help until we can get back on our feet." One of my sisters, the older one, crossed her arms and said nothing. The other stared at the floor, biting her lip, as if she wanted to be anywhere else. I could feel the gazes of the employees burning my back. I knew they were all trying to figure out who this ragged man was, calling me son. Me, the CEO in a suit and tie, now standing before a ghost who claimed to be my father. Rick ran a hand through his thinning hair and sighed loudly, theatrically, as if carrying an unbearable weight. "I know I messed up, Ian. I know I wasn't the father you deserved, but you have to understand. I was young, I didn't know what I was doing." He reached out, trying to touch my shoulder, but I stepped back before he could reach me. "Things are different now. Can you give us a chance? Can you help your family?" The word family turned my stomach. He spoke as if all those years of abandonment could be erased with a cheap excuse, as if I had been kept in a drawer, waiting to be taken out when it was convenient for him. One of the children tugged on the sleeve of my jacket. He had light eyes, just like Hannah, my older sister. "Uncle, can we go to your house?" he asked, with the cruel innocence of someone who doesn't know the weight of what they're saying. My heart was racing, my hands were cold, my mouth was dry. Behind the desk, the guard was still waiting for my signal. Update 2. I looked into Rick's eyes and, for the first time since he walked into that lobby, I let all the pent-up rage out. "You are not my father." My voice came out firm, without hesitation. "The man who raised me died 2 years ago, along with the woman who taught me what love was. You handed me over like I was trash, and now you come looking for me." The entire reception fell silent. The children, confused, took my sister's hands, understanding nothing. But the sentence that came out of his mouth next froze me to the core. "Then it doesn't have to be money." Rick scratched his sparse beard, trying to keep his own voice steady. "I want you to do for them what Mike and Carol did for you." My heart stopped for an instant. "What did you say?" I asked, almost in disbelief. He took a step forward, his gaze fixed, as if he had found the perfect solution. He pointed to the children, all small, poorly dressed, looking around without grasping the gravity of the moment. "Adopt my grandchildren." His voice was firm, loaded with demand. "Give them the life you had, the opportunity you received." The request wasn't just cruel, it was an attempt to repeat history. As if I were obligated to save the children my sisters didn't know how to raise. As if I had to be the father he never was. "Are you insane? You want me to raise your daughter's children because you failed as a man, as a father, as a human being?" Rick opened his arms theatrically, as if he were a wrongly treated victim. "They deserve it. They deserve the same chance you had. You should understand that better than anyone." The children started to cry, and in that moment, seeing those innocent eyes, I felt the greatest rage I had ever felt, not toward them, but toward the man who had brought them here, using children as bargaining chips. I saw the whole scene as if I were outside my body, Rick, pleading with open hands, my sisters, with their heads bowed, the children, crying without understanding. It was as if the full weight of my childhood had returned, but now multiplied by 4 pairs of innocent eyes. "You should be grateful, Ian," Rick continued, his voice cracking but with that manipulative tone. "If Mike and Carol had left you on the street, you wouldn't be here today. They saved you. Now it's your turn to save these children." He spoke as if my value only existed as an eternal debt, as if everything I had achieved had to be repaid in the form of sacrifice. I clenched my fists. I forced myself not to lose control. "You abandoned me, and now you want me to take care of your daughter's children because you people don't know how to be responsible." Rick took another step, tears in his eyes, though it was impossible to know if they were real or fake. "It's not their fault, Ian," he yelled, pointing at the children. "It wasn't your fault either, remember?" The children looked at me in silence, with expressions that mixed fear and hope. My 2 sisters stood side by side, as always. Hannah, the older one, held Nicole's arm tightly, as if it were the only thing keeping them upright. They didn't say a word, but their silence was heavy. The fathers of those children had disappeared. One fled upon learning of the pregnancy. The other swore he would look for work in another state and never came back. 2 different men, 2 identical stories. The family pattern repeating itself like a curse, abandonment, neglect, desperation. And now Rick wanted to pass that burden on to me. "They have no one, Ian," he insisted, pointing to my sisters and then to the children. "These kids were left behind, just like you were once. You know what that feels like. You have to give them the same chance you had." My sisters remained silent, their gazes lowered. Maybe out of shame, maybe out of fear of admitting they were handing over their own children like someone handing over a suitcase they can no longer carry. I looked at them and saw in them the same cowardice I remembered from Rick. There was no defense, no pride, just the expectation that someone else would solve what they never wanted to face. Rick stretched his arm toward me with an open hand, as if handing me an invisible object. "They're your responsibility now. You can give them school, a home, food, a future. You can give them what I couldn't. My eyes were burning. It was rage. Rage at his audacity, rage at my sister's passivity, rage at being in front of children who had asked for none of this. I stared at him for a few seconds, breathing deeply until I found firmness in my voice. I am not going to raise your daughter's children. I will not repeat your cowardice. But I will not turn my back on children who are not to blame for anything. My sisters looked up, surprised, but they didn't have the courage to say anything. Rick looked ready to celebrate until he heard the rest. I will pay for a quality school for each of them. Uniforms, materials, transportation. But let me be clear, if they don't attend regularly, if they don't take advantage of the opportunity, the help ends. That's all. I pointed to the children, who were looking at me without fully understanding. Only they will have my support. You, the adults, will not see a single cent from my pocket. Rick's face turned red as he swallowed hard. I turned to the company lawyer who had come down with me. Also prepare a lawsuit against the biological fathers of these children. Let them learn the meaning of responsibility. Months later, the children were in private schools with clean uniforms, bringing home good grades. I never went to pick them up at the classroom door, but I was present at every parent-teacher conference. A few months after that night in the reception, Rick came back. He didn't come with the children or my sisters. He came alone. Ragged, with the same worn-out speech as always. He waited for me at the parking garage exit, leaning against an old car, as if he still had some right over me. Ian, help me out with some money. Just until I get organized. I didn't answer immediately. I just looked at him closely, and the only thing that came to my mind was Mike and Carol. Everything they had built with effort, everything they had taught me about responsibility. I took a deep breath and let it out, dryly. Help you? Never. Whatever I had to give you, you threw it away when you left me. Rick lowered his head, mumbled something I didn't hear, and walked away. He never came back. Meanwhile, my nieces and nephews grew up. They attended the school I paid for, used new backpacks, received top-quality materials, and when they missed school without a valid reason, the principal already knew, my support could end. I made it clear from the beginning that I would only help if they took advantage of it. And they did. Years later, they came to find me, now as young adults. They wanted internships at the company. I accepted. First in the warehouse, then in administration exactly as Mike had done with me. Today, they all work with me, and each one of them carries the mark of having fought to earn their place. They call me uncle, but I know from the way they hug me on birthdays, from how they look at me in meetings, that I mean more. They respect me. They love me. As for Rick and my sisters, we barely exchange 2 sentences a year. They are still waiting for something that will never arrive. I didn't break the cycle just for myself, I also broke it for those kids who weren't to blame. And the truth is, I have never regretted helping only them, because it was enough to transform destinies without repeating the mistakes of the past.